Everybody. Oh, we're good.
Yeah.
So happy to be here. My name is Jen Thomas, and I'm a certified personal trainer. I've had my own business, personal training and bootcamp business for the last, make myself sound old, 15 years. And the topic for today is one that really excites me. So we're talking about habits. And it's interesting how we've all been brought up to think about habits as either a good habit or a bad habit. But what if we reframe that and looked at it in terms of, is that habit serving you? Is it serving the way you want to live your life? Is it helping you reach your goals? Or is it not? So it's something that I've been using for an awful long time because people have all these great expectations. For example, a client, I'm going to get up at 6 a.m. and I'm going to exercise every day. But you know what? If you're not an early morning person, that habit's not going to serve you, and you're certainly not going to stick to it. And all it's going to do is be a bit discouraging. So the really good thing about habits is taking a look at first of all, why do you want to set this habit in place? Because there's so many different ways to look at it. And to really break it down in chunks and ways that you can make it something that it's almost
relax your shoulders.
Okay, thank you. And yes, that is a good way to relax for sure. But if you think about it in terms of the way habits are formed in terms of neural pathways in your brain. So a great analogy that I like to use is if you're going on a hike, most people want to choose the path that's already well trodden and well beaten down. And it's done by rote. You just automatically follow that path, and those are those habits that have been ingrained, like your shower routine. No one has to think about what they're doing in the shower. There's a good reason that whole adage that my best ideas come when I'm in the shower. It's because the things you do in the shower are absolute habits. You don't have to think. Your mind is freed up to do other things. So if you go back to that path in the woods, and if you want to change a habit, it's like you're bushwhacking. So if you think about a new habit that way, it's going to take a while to make a new path. So it's interesting because people say, well, it takes 21 days to make a habit. Well, it's a bit of a myth. And it's actually started back by Dr. Maxwell Maltz in 1960. And it was based more on, he said, it takes 21 days to form a new vision. So, I mean, if it's something easy, like I'm going to drink, a glass of water every day with my lunch, that's something that perhaps you could do in 21 days. But I think you have to be kind to yourself and patient when it comes to putting together a new habit, because you are going to fall back and you are going to keep going. But another good thing to do is figure out, okay, so where that breakdown happens in that process or that system that you're trying to create to put that habit together, what's stopping you? What is that obstacle? And how could you take it back a step to create better flow? So for example, a habit that I have, and particularly in these self-isolation, or we all have a little bit more time. So I've set a habit to walk every morning, no matter what. So what I've done is I've got a habit where I put my walking shoes right outside my bedroom door. I have my clothing all ready to go in the bathroom the night before. So it's creating a system, and they're creating cues for you to really start working towards those habits. And these habits can be used for exercise, to remember, to drink enough. So having that jug of water in your fridge, because I think we're all going to the fridge a little more often than we were when we were working full time. And it's like, oh, there's that cue. My water jug is in the fridge. So it just helps you imprint some of those cues, and that's going to contribute to making it more of a habit. So another thing to do is to try something. It's okay to change your system and tweak it a little bit. So if you're making a change, look at it as almost a 1-week experiment. And if it's perpetually not working for you, take a step back again and tweak it. See what small modifications you could make. One of those things for exercise might be, I need a buddy. Because I often, for my bootcamp classes, I'll say, find a pal. Because it's that accountability piece that can be really critical for some people, because they don't want to let somebody else down. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, if Sarah's coming to class, I better go because we said we do it together. And you keep doing that enough. And then all of a sudden, even if Sarah's not coming, you've set this habit in motion and you're going to go. So it's interesting because I'd like to talk to Cheryl a little bit about that because Cheryl, I think accountability has been a really big piece for you in terms of your journey and creating those really healthy habits. And I thought maybe you'd like to share a little bit about your experience with that accountability piece.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jen. Yes, my name is Cheryl Andrioli, and I'm living in Montreal, Quebec, and I am a wellness coach. And I just want to share a little bit about my journey. Mine was a weight loss journey and started a little bit before the company that I'm currently with. It was my own journey, and in order to get started, I actually had to have some of this accountability. And so what I did to have that accountability was to join the gym. I know gym is not for everyone, but I felt that if I made the commitment there, and then the second step was to book myself a trainer, I then felt that I could not go because I paid to have a trainer. And so I had to show up for that person. In the end, you're showing up for yourself, but because I was committed to somebody else, I didn't want to let that person down, but in turn didn't let myself down by going. And as my journey continued, again, I found that I had to have other goals. And some of the things that helped me was to set this enormous goal that at the beginning I never really thought that I could accomplish, which was to step on stage as a competitor because I had well over 100 pounds to lose. But by being accountable to that competition, that made me put the actions in motion and take all the necessary steps. And what was really funny was I set out to do it, but didn't really actually commit to actually stepping on stage. I kept stepping back and saying, well, I really don't need to step on stage. That's not really what's important. What's important is that for me to get there. But in truth, when I really reflected on that statement that I would say to everybody, what I was trying to give myself was an out of not achieving that goal. And so in the end, I said, if I'm putting in the work and I'm doing the stuff that needs to be done, why wouldn't I honor myself by stepping on stage and showing off what I've done? And so I found for me, always to be accountable to something helps me stay true to myself, helps me stay true to my goals, and being accountable to somebody else, truly in the end, in the essence of it, is being accountable to me. And so when this pandemic started, because I no longer had the gym, which to me was an accountability partner, because I don't go with anybody to the gym, but I do see the same faces every day. And when I don't show up for a few days, the first thing they'll say to me is, where have you been? What's happening? Weren't you well? And so I kind of feel accountable to see those people every day. Plus it's pleasurable to be in an environment where there's some social interaction. Even though I don't spend a whole lot of time speaking all the time to people, but just being around that whole environment, it's motivating to see other people working on their goals. Sometimes that pushes you in your own pathway for your own journey and your goals. And so that's an accountability. So when all of that stopped for me with this pandemic, I felt lost. I actually kind of rebelled at the beginning and did absolutely nothing because I guess I was in my own little pity party feeling sorry for myself. And a few days into it, I thought, this is ridiculous. Everything that I've accomplished is going to be down the tubes if I don't start to be accountable to myself again. And so I did reach out to a few different friends and tell them how I was feeling. And then just did some soul searching and said, what is it that you really want? Do you want to be back to where you were? Because I was close to 300 pounds and there's no way that I wanted to be back there. And so I again started posting videos, which is another form for me to be accountable to myself, because when I post those videos on social media, I'm showing up every day for me and showing up for others that I do know that I am inspiring. And that's very important to me as well, because one of my passions in life is to help other people. And so I thought, if I'm posting that, then people are going to be continuing to look for those posts. So I've got to do it. So that's helped me keep accountable for my exercise, and was wavering a little bit on the nutrition aspect of it. And so again, did some self-talk and said, okay, what is it you really want? And what are your goals? And where do you want to be? and I'm showing up for me. And so I started this week a whole new routine, back on my 30-day challenge, and started to create another new habit, which is something I've not really ever done. And I've written down what I've done exercise every day and what I'm putting in my mouth every day. And that's been important. So far this week, it's been a great week. Exercise has been great. Food has been great. So I feel more that I'm on track and more in control than I've felt over the past 4 to 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's super.
Yes, I just realized I was on. Thank you for sharing that, because as Jen said, everybody has different, it's going to resonate differently for everybody. And so my name's Lori Clark. I'll jump in right now, if that's okay. I've been in kinesiology, health sciences, and holistic nutrition for 35 years. That's how old I am. And one of the beautiful things is that when you ride the roller coaster of your 20s and your 30s and your 40s, and I'm on the back end of my 50s, I think the biggest word I have learned, two, for building habits, because I've been on every diet known to man, failed them all because that's how they're designed. So I guess I succeeded in that sense. But permission was one of the words. And the other word is grace. And just listening, not to the external noise that I was a perfect product of, like, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. Oh, that's a habit I should be doing. I was shitting all over myself. And it wasn't serving me and my own body's needs and my own soul. And when I stopped listening externally to what I was being told would be, and Jen mentioned this at the beginning, you know, that there's this 5 a.m. club, and I have so many people I know who are in it, and I actually felt like a total loser because that wasn't my jam, because I was a competitive swimmer when I was young. So from grade 7 to 13, I was up every morning at 5 a.m. to swim of my own choice because my folks didn't do the driving. It was like, you want to do that? You're crazy. It's on you. So I was very self-motivated. And then when I had my own children for over a decade, I was up at 4 a.m. to get them out the door to do their skating because they were high-level skaters. I had done my time in that early morning realm of getting up, being functional, and working out. And I did not resonate with that anymore. And I needed to find a new routine and a new habit that was going to reset my body, because grind, hustle, force, effort, earn were words that no longer resonated. At the time in my 20s, they did resonate, but in my 40s and 50s, they were not resonating. They were creating burnout for me. So I think one of the things about habits is my habits have changed over time, and whether it's my exercise habit, I mean, I was the queen of going to the gym. How hard could I sweat? How much could I deplete myself? How many, over exercising things could I do with the illusion that the external body mattered? And I had great ripped abs and great muscles and great strength. But because my internal health wasn't strong, my adrenals were burning out from doing that, I had to reset and I had to build new habits. My new habits now, it's such a paradigm shift, because breath work, 8 to 9 hours of sleep with a good 30 to 60 minute meditation immediately after I wake up, before I get up, and then yoga, walking, as Jen mentioned, she does walking every day, getting back to honoring the fact that walking out in nature every day with my dogs is exercise. I don't have to go sweat my butt off in a gym or in my home gym to achieve the goals. And so the health that I've needed now with those new habits took a long time. And I had to give myself permission every day. And I think if I can add to how do you build your own accountability for what your own habits are, I had to give myself permission every single morning. So I had to come back into square one with a beginner's mind, as if I was learning how to ride a bike every single day while I was building those new habits. And that grace, that piece of grace of just not expecting myself to pick up the habit. Like, 21 days, you build a new habit. Some, you can read other things where it's 60 days. And I was of the mindset that if I didn't hit those numbers, I was a failure. That's just my brain. That was my conditioned brain, was I had to hit those external numbers, even if they weren't resonating. I didn't allow room for grace, for adaptation, for reality. So as I have created all new habits, that's been a big, big piece for me, is to give myself grace and permission to take as long as it takes to anchor the habit. And the other thing I'm doing to help anchor those new habits is I create a win. How can I celebrate doing something? So I had a major surgery 1.5 years ago, and I realized after attempting to get right back into my high-speed life, literally a week after, my body said, not a chance, you're an idiot. And I slowed down. And during that season, my expectations totally changed. I went to the minimum, but what I did do was, if I did the one thing for my fitness, which at that point was stretch yoga, the one thing for my exercise, walking in nature, the one thing for my work, like one work task a day, I shrunk it right down, I would have a celebration. So it could be dancing to a song, which, yes, I do that in my house by myself with my dogs. It could be, I love to color, like I'm an artist. So taking out all my paints is a big production. So I do a lot of coloring or journaling. So, permission to create half an hour of space where I go sit in my sunroom and I sit there and journal in the middle of the afternoon. Like those kinds of permission, those are the wins. Those are the celebrations I was doing for just achieving those little new habits on a daily basis. And now, like, I revel in my slow morning. I call it a slow morning. I own it. I love it. I am loath to give it up. I schedule my life around it. But I'm in better health than I've been internally, mentally, physically, spiritually in decades from those. And it's these tiny little micro habits. And I know when we were speaking earlier today, Joanne was talking about micro habits, not just habits, but micro habits, and the impact of reframing the conversation. And maybe that's a lot of what we're talking about, is reframing our expectations and what we hear externally. And I know, Joanne, you had watched, I think it was an audio or it was a webinar yesterday that really kind of dove into that, right? So I'm going to just pass it over to you for a sec.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. I know once we're going to have a little bit more of a discussion, which is kind of what we want to do to really get into this topic a little bit more. But yeah, I watched this amazing webinar yesterday. It was actually on stress resiliency. And of course, it was very poignant for right now because, and we talked about this last week, when we, people are hitting week 5, 6, and 7 of our new staycation. So reframing our words around that. I'm getting really big on that because I really think our vocabulary for certain things kind of sucks. And we need to just like shift that up a bit. And I know it came from the mainstream that, these words are what we were using: self-isolation, social distancing. Wow, those are like super powerful words in terms of our psyche, in terms of separateness and whatever. And, so staycation, mindful distance, or, safe space. I don't know, you can come up with different words, right? So she was also talking about, which I thought was excellent too, is this new normal word that we're starting to use. Oh, this is our new normal. Well, hold on, this isn't normal. But also maybe what we were doing before wasn't normal. And what we're maybe going to do after this isn't normal either. And so again, we're locking ourselves into this mindset. And we do this with our habits. Okay, what is normal? And, okay, that's a normal, or that's a good thing, or that's not normal, that's a bad thing. That's really for us to decide. So this webinar, I think maybe if anybody's listening to it, they're thinking they're going to get all these tips, but it's really a general discussion about, you have to sit down and do some self-investigative, internal analysis, I guess. And that this particular time, if nothing else, can be affording us that space to be able to do that. A lot of us, I'm very fortunate to work from home. Lori works from home. Jen kind of half works from home. So does Cheryl now. So we're in a unique space most of the time to kind of look at our day. And I know in this particular space of the last 4 or 5 weeks, the first 4 weeks have been kind of like, wow, what's happened? This is crazy. This crazy thing has happened to us. And now it's kind of like, everybody's like, I sense everybody's feeling really restless. When is this going to be over? How much longer is this going on? Feeling, I sense, and even myself, I'm feeling pretty rebellious about, really, like, come on. And so it's doing this little self-analysis around all this thinking. And yet, we are kind of going with, I guess, what we'll call the general thinking that's out there, that this could continue longer. We have to be mindful about how we kind of reintegrate stuff. But if nothing else, I think a lot of us are experiencing this wake up call of, gosh, I've been doing a lot of things that have not been serving me. I've been living in this crazy hamster wheel of whatever. And one thing that, I think this is really going to bust wide open is this old school thinking that we cannot work and be productive from home. I think a lot of people are proving that that's just BS, and we can be productive and work from home given certain circumstances. And that is going to really shift in a positive way, a big paradigm around how we work and how we are productive in our day. And so some of the things that she was talking about yesterday on this great webinar about stress resiliency had to do with this passage of how we have a crisis, how we move out of it, kind of like the stages of grief, which I listened to an amazing podcast by Brene Brown and this gentleman who worked with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross on, the stages of grief. Yeah, Lori, you're muted, but I saw your lips moving. I saw that. It's an amazing podcast. And, again, he kind of went, wait a minute, we were generally talking about stages, like these are things we've observed. They don't happen in chronological order, and there's no time frame. Like, he was busting the whole model that I'd heard. And again, we got into this, it was this prescribed thinking, oh no, this is how it is, and this is how it happens. And, it's like X, Y, Z, and, first there's denial, then there's this. And he said, like, everybody experiences that in a different way. That's exactly what we're doing right now. Everybody's experiencing what is happening in a different way. There's no right or wrong about it. And so habits that we've, had before that now we've had to, reevaluate or shift, because now, like, Guy and I, my husband and I, we've been spending like, not 24/7, but like if you're in a partnership and you're home all the time, like it's like, okay, well, we got to reevaluate here. Something's got to shift. And so we had to come up with some new things, right? So my normal, I was like with Lori, kind of developing this over a good year of figuring out, okay, what do I need to start my day? I went through some serious back issues a number of years ago. We've all had our stories, and out of that, I experienced some depression. Like, I was coming out of the chronic pain thing and not, really in a funk, and kind of actually had to acknowledge to myself, hey, I think I'm depressed because of having chronic pain, like sciatic pain, for like 4 or 5 months in a row. And then it came back and I had it again. And so it was that kind of critical thing that happened to me, kind of like Lori's surgery, where you had to, you've had something shove in your face and you've had to kind of go, okay, I got to reevaluate. And I had to think about, okay, what do I need? What do I need to make myself start my day not feeling anxious, feeling grounded, starting out, calm, and because I'm more of an introvert, and I'm a pretty balanced, I'm a Capricorn, I'm that goat, I'm the mountain goat, moving this slow, steady pace along. How do I do that in the midst of all this kerfuffle that I'm feeling? And it took me a long time to sort of really vocalize it, write it down, like all the things we've been talking about, kind of get clear, rework it several different times, and come up with my plan. And that was no 21 days. That was like 365 before I really was able to figure out those micro habits, those little baby steps that I had to put in place on a daily basis to create that. And so I've created it. And then I had to have a discussion with my husband, like, who's like Tigger in the morning. Hi, good morning. He's up, he can go to his computer, he can start working. I'm like, whoa. Like, he did that for many years when he was working out of the office. Great, doesn't impact me. He's up, gone before I even wake up. Sometimes that used to be the routine. Not in the last 8 years when we've been working together at home. And, you know, we've had a home environment change in the last 2 years. Like, things keep changing, nothing's static. So we have to keep that flexibility piece in mind. And I love your 2 words, Lori, grace and permission, because, you know, those are just so important to keep in mind when we get like, it's like the you know, drunk monkey on our shoulder who's telling us all this stuff based on past programming, you know, our upbringing stuff, you know, there's all those pieces that come into play. So you guys should just unmute now, and we should just pitch in on some other dialogue around this, because, you know, I think there's a couple of key points that we want to maybe illuminate as a go around. Is like, you know, there's no, you know, some of your key points to share. Like, for me, there is no all in or nothing. I know one of the things that I've put into place in the last year, 2 years, because I feel words have power, right? There's so much energy behind them. And if we're clear on our words, that can have so much good momentum. There's no all or nothing. My phrasing is progress, not perfection. So I'm always sort of looking for that little bit of extra progress, because even in the last 2 weeks that Guy and I shifted and we kind of put this new thing into place, and, you know, we've only been really doing it maybe 30% of the time, but we've got it there. It's our template and we're working towards it. You know, it's this progress thing. So that's kind of one of my key things that I constantly keep in mind. Maybe you guys can share what some of the key things that you kind of work with.
I think one thing for me in terms of habits is, I think people, when they try to make a big lifestyle change, they want to change their diet, they want to change their exercise routine, they want to change and I think it's really important to focus on, like you say, some of those micro things, but choose one thing to work on, because the mind can't make that many changes and you're not going to recognize what's working and what's not working if you're working on 3 or 4 different things. So, you know, hone in on your nutrition and be kind to yourself. Just get out for a walk. Don't make it a big exercise thing. Or if it's exercise you want to focus on, then, you know, it's just, if you see what I'm saying, it's too much for the mind to make new pathways when you're asking it to go on all these different topics. It's going to be overwhelming and nothing's going to stick.
I think that's so critical. And I know even when I'm working with someone trying to change nutrition habits, because we are spring and it's a time to, you know, do our cleansing of our home, cleansing of our bodies, unless it's the rare person who's willing to anchor into a structured program and committed to follow it because their why is bigger than the chances of them falling off, or they've set up the accountability pieces like Cheryl talked about, I'll say to someone, can we just start with changing your breakfast? Like, can we just work on that for the first week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks until you get that pattern, that if I had to pick one habit in your nutrition day, I start with your bookend. So let's start with the first in the day, get that solid. And then once that becomes that habit, that like taking a shower, you don't have to think about it, then we're going to look at something else. And understanding, and again, giving yourself permission that these are habits, like the kinds of habits we look to change as adults have been stuck into us since we were children, and we didn't get a choice because we were children. We just took them on. Society slammed them in, and we got them all smashed in. And it's like those cardboards from the grocery store where you see them all compressed together. It takes a while to get the air in between so you can lift the dang things up and see the light of day. And we forget that there's so much layering of stuff in our mind, so that it's not just what goes in my mouth with my hand. That mindset piece of why and how and what that started from, it, there's just so much. So again, being gentle with ourselves, because society doesn't like us to be gentle with ourselves. Society likes us to feel like garbage and to feel like we have to go all in because it serves the consumptive model. But on this staycation, as you mentioned, Joanne, we've been on this staycation long enough to get a really good picture that the consumptive model wasn't ours to begin with. It doesn't serve our better health, mind, body, soul health, and we don't need it. Like, what is anybody spending money on these days? Food. Like the first week, I think people went nuts on Amazon, and then that was it. It was like, okay, my budget is for food, and minimal other things, maybe mental health, like taking courses and stuff. But the priorities of purchasing the spring wardrobe with the designer labels has now been reallocated. So we have a real opportunity right now in this spring season, I think, to make some changes with less distraction, actually.
Yeah. Cheryl, did you want to add anything?
I was just going to say, sorry, I had myself muted because the printer was going off. I was just going to say that, yeah, me personally, I am a person that has always been an all or nothing, and that has not served me, because when you can't do it all, then you end up doing nothing. And so I'm trying to change that habit by doing one step at a time. And so that's kind of what I've done this week. I'm focusing more on the nutrition aspect of it. I'm doing my workouts, but I'm not beating myself up if I'm not getting in a 3-hour workout, which is what I've done for 5 years, and never gave myself that grace to do less than. And I wouldn't miss a day at the gym unless I was sick, but that didn't happen very often. So that's why I've also had difficulty in the last 18 months with my injuries, not being able to go to the gym. It's like everything that I know has been changed. And so I'm trying to work on those small things and building on that and allow myself that grace and that permission to have a day off, because I wouldn't do that before. And so I think that's helping me in other ways than possibly that one journey or one road I'm on, because our life is many roads. It's not just one.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Beautifully said.
Yeah. Yeah, beautifully said. And I think that's another big thing that's actually going to come out of this time period. And interestingly enough, it does have to do around sort of the medical, social, hygiene practices that they've been talking about from day one. Is I honestly think in our society that those have gotten very lax in terms of not so much cleanliness in your environment, but just the basic, I don't know if you guys, I remember watching a Grey's Anatomy episode once, I think it was Grey's Anatomy, where there was some issue with something going around in the hospital, and they were using one of those scans that you had to run your hands through after everybody came out of the bathroom, because they were trying to figure out who was spreading whatever it was they were spreading. And in the hospital, these guys were going to the bathroom and not washing their hands. That's a real, but okay, so that's a funny one. But in addition to that, I think because of our awareness around, taking care of ourselves and being a bit more mindful about, spreading things and, or not spreading things. I think this is actually going to be a really good shift for people to companies, I hope in particular, it has to come from the companies, but people to reevaluate the sick day policies within their work environment, within their companies. And, I used to do this because again, this is about giving grace and permission and all these things that we don't do for ourselves, especially when we're in a conventional work environment. And it's Cheryl, like you said, I never missed a day at the gym unless I was sick, and that was hardly ever. If you're really not well, great, but there are times when you are well, and you may not have when you're not well, and you may not have given yourself permission to be okay with that. and say, oh, I'm not feeling well today. I'm going to give myself permission to just stay at home and not feel well.
Yeah.
So I had a day like that yesterday. We were just talking about that earlier. I got up in the morning, lots of different energies going on, but here the weather totally changed, and it went from beautiful sunny to a lower pressure system. And, you know, I definitely react to that. And I was like, I couldn't think, I couldn't function. I was just in a funk. And I went, you know what, that's okay that I'm in a funk. I'm going to give myself a day off, because honestly, that's the other thing. When you work for yourself from home, you tend to work a little bit more, or, you know, the 7-day week thing sometimes, which we've also been talking about. But I think out of this, there's going to be a paradigm shift about what it means for self-care. And when you are not feeling well, to pay attention to that. I'm hoping that's going to be a big shift, that people will give themselves permission and those things of grace to say, you know what, I can't do the all or nothing. I'm not well today. I'm going to stay home and look after myself, which actually also looks after other people. So that's an interesting kind of side thing of habits that, you know, I think is going to be a big impact in our bigger society. What do you guys think?
Energetically, if we go way back to before modern times, humans were tapped into nature because we are connected to the earth. And we have seen, as Mother Nature kicked us all off her space, she healed so quickly. Now we're being given a chance to reconnect with the energies of nature. And as you just so beautifully said, Joanne, the full moon, the new moon, like any teacher knows when it's a full moon without looking up in the sky or looking on an astrological calendar. You just have to look at your classroom. There is a significant energetic impact. Like, we are just energy, denser than, you know, the sky and the clouds. And when we start to realize that everything is energy, we now start to be able to move through our environment flowing as opposed to in resistance. It's like, do you want to paddle upstream for the rest of your life, or would you like the downstream flow? And, you know, people have noticed on the staycation, if you watch mainstream news or you tap into the media, even just if you're on like Facebook, for example, and you're just scrolling and trolling, you're going to feel sick, because the energy, the vibrational energy is so low that it literally punches you in the stomach. And putting language to that and educating people about that is something we now have an opportunity to do, because the storefront doors to the shitty diet companies are currently closed. So there's a beautiful educational opportunity for humans to reconnect with their essence, to me, which is that we are nature embodied, all of us, including nature. We're so closely connected, but we've been separated. And so now closing that separation is such a beautiful opportunity, because it restores health. It brings health back into balance when we minimize that separation. And that excites me. It excites me so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, and Earth Day being yesterday, very poignant as well. You know, this is quite a different Earth Day this year. Yeah. So I think we have Sherry on. I don't know if Sherry had any questions or wanted to jump in there. We don't see her, but I think she may be hearing us.
Hi, Jerry.
I'm hearing you. I'm hearing you. No questions, though.
Okay.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining. And so we're at, we've our 40 minutes. We've done well today, ladies, keeping it a little shorter. So we'll look forward to next week, and we'll have another topic that we haven't quite figured out yet, but we love doing these online discussions for everyone and sharing some information. And on that note, we do have our spring reset starting next Monday. There's flyers, posters going around on our groups and on our personal pages about it. Please check it out. And that is a way actually that can help you set up a foundation for some different habits if you want to do something that's a bit more focused, because it is a sort of guided program. It does allow for that. So with that, thanks everyone. And thank you, beautiful lady colleagues, beautiful goddesses, for joining in as always. And we'll pick it up again next week.
Thank
All right.
you.
Take care.
Thank
Have a great
you.
week.
Have a
Bye.
great